Your heart and your warrior spirit's what takes you over there to do the job that has to be done. It's not because you like it.
That's what I love about this country is it does appreciate its warriors, it appreciates its fallen.
You're still a soldier. You never really come off the line. You'll always be one.
I know how it affected change in the country and with my wife and my kids, and how important it is to have gone forward to do that for the red, white, and blue.
These are modern warriors. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to Modern Warriors, a Memorial Day special. I'm Pete Hegseth, and we've got a great evening for you from the Texas ranch of a man you all know well, Navy SEAL Marcus Luttrell, and his brother Morgan is here as well. Thank you guys for hosting us.
You bet. Thanks for being here.
On the compound.
That's it. Made it past the gate.
Made it past the gate. Adam barely made it past the gate.
Barely.
Members of Congress usually don't get let in.
Stood out there a while.
Yeah. You made him wait for a while.
The nays aren't all the A's aren't in yet.
That's right. We shall see. And I didn't know this till a while ago. Chad, you and I went to IOBC together at Fort Benning 16 years ago. We were in the same platoon.
And that is?
That is Infantry Officer Basic Course.
You guys didn't know that?
Well,
we
knew
did.
But
We just hadn't seen each other in
Which one
16
of you
years.
Which one of you won that guy?
I think it was me. I think it's quite
I didn't hang out with that guy.
The better of the group, better of the duo. But Memorial Day
He
is...
saw him, was like, what are you doing here?
Oh, he knows stories.
That's what I'm saying.
That's the problem.
How'd you land this gig?
Exactly. All right, I'm going to read a little bit more. But Memorial Day is a special day. But for this group, like all combat vets, every day at some level is Memorial Day. You're remembering the guys who didn't make it back. And we'll talk about what this day means, as well as some of the biggest topics of the day facing vets and all Americans. The enemy we're still fighting overseas in the long war, the threat at the border not far from here. And we're going to touch on some controversial topics as well, like the state of the VA, veterans benefits, thoughts about where we are with that. And one particular topic, something some warfighters are facing when it comes to coming home, being accused of war crimes. And I want to start right there with this group. I mean, all of you at some level, whether it's in the sky or on the ground, have pulled triggers and made tough calls. And in the news recently have been cases like Navy SEAL Eddie Gallagher, Green Beret Matt Goldstein, Clint Lawrence, the first lieutenant, who's in prison at Leavenworth. President has mentioned he may pardon one or a few of them coming up. And it comes at the same time that the American Taliban, John Walker Lynn, is being released from prison 3 years early. We could start anywhere we want from that, but is that a result of rules of engagement that were too restrictive for a long time? Is it people at the Pentagon second-guessing decisions? When you look at complicated cases like that, what's your first thought, Marcus?
I think it's a little bit of all of that. I mean, we rotate our power every 48 years. I mean, people come and go, but we've still been fighting this battle. I mean, it's kind of the first one where the dad can talk to his son about the same kind of thing. I mean, almost 20 plus years now we've been at this, and it's real important not to pass. We should do this anyways. This is part of our country. You don't pass judgment on somebody until we got all the evidence. You sit in there and see what happens, and then we render that. And a lot of time, because of how fast the news cycle is, and just because people like talking about it, everything gets thrust out to us now. Where back in the day, we would elect our politicians to go up to D.C. to do that arguing behind closed doors, so we wouldn't have to deal with it out here. Such as with Eddie, I mean, it's locked down. No one has any idea. I mean, for instance, when you came in, we were talking about that. You said something I'd never even heard before. And then I said something that I had heard, and it was kind of just exaggerated off of what we were both talking about. And when it comes to a man's life, and especially with war, putting our brothers and sisters in that kind of reality anyways is tough. So to pass judgment on it when you weren't there, it's like writing a book about something that you think happened or you weren't even there.
Well, what about the fact that we're calling these guys, some people are calling these guys war criminals? It's like they haven't even had a trial yet. It's guilty until proven innocent in the court of public opinion.
And most of the people doing that have never been in combat. And until you go over there and you've had to make a split-second hard decision, I mean, me personally, I really don't think you should have a vote or a say-so in that, because nobody ever, it's like we get around people and, your bar or something, somebody goes, well, somebody shot at me, I'd do this. It's like, you obviously never been shot at.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you don't know what you would do. Your training takes over, that tunnel vision kicks in, and sometimes you don't even remember things until a few days or even a week later of what actually transpired because it's in the heat of battle.
The experience is different for each person. That's why there's a collective that judge.
But using words like war criminal, I mean, war criminals reserved for Bashar al-Assad, Nazi prison camp guards, people in Kosovo that, murdered a bunch of people. That's war criminal. Somebody that, in the heat of combat made a decision. It's like with police shootings, you see, it's like, well, why didn't they just shoot the guy in the leg, to disarm him? Or why and it's like, when you're in that moment, I'm not a ground guy, and everybody I've talked to, when you're in that moment, you just look at it and you're like, you can't judge until you were in that position. If the intention of somebody is, I'm going to go out and I want to murder innocent civilians, that's one thing. If it's a decision made in the heat of combat, if we're going to put American troops at risk if they think that every time they pull the trigger or make a decision that they could go to jail, and we're going to have commanders not making decisions, and it's going to be devastating to our efforts.
In a couple of the cases, it was the frustration with the catch and release program. So you catch these guys, you can't do CSI on the battlefield right there, so you don't have enough evidence to keep them. In a couple of cases, they made took some extra measures after the fact that are now being scrutinized. I mean, is that a big part of the frustration? Hey, we're letting these guys go?
Adam hit it on the head. It's a dangerous game we're playing. We set a precedence with what the system, if you will, is doing to these guys, labeling war criminals. We have half the country that goes all in and says, yeah, they're war criminals. Societal norms are shifted with social media, and that's a dangerous game.
Yes.
Because each individual situation is completely different. Each case is completely different. I would urge everybody to not do that knee-jerk reaction and go all in, because whether we like to believe this or not, public perception, it rises to the level of our politicians and our leaders, which obviously will weight down on the individual that's being accused, if you will. And case in point with Eddie, you never know. And it's a dangerous game.
I've talked to guys like Adam, fighter pilots, aviators, guys in a gunship, and they're like, we're scared to shoot now. It's like, why? And you're on the ground and you're literally calling in fires. You're like, I need fires this location, marked by my laser.
I need help here, man.
Yeah, and these guys are going, I ain't got clearance yet.
The ROEs are so dynamic. They change. They could change daily. They could change with a new leadership. They could change with a new not just
incident.
Exactly. And if that word's not disseminated down appropriately and directly, and there's an incident, who's at fault?
Wherever we're fighting is, you need to drop back in the technology time zone in that as well, and just the dissemination of the word. Literally across the street, it's so dangerous to even cross the street to get that word out before something happens. And they're fighting written on the old rules. A lot of these guys going to boot camp, got some AOT, and then they're in there.
Yep.
We're not talking about judges and people who know
lawyers,
theologians who know everything about it, because that's what we had to turn into. I mean, we're kind of like a police force that had to go up there and fight for a country that didn't have a police force. And we're chasing the gang, and when we learn their names, and we catch some of the gang members, and then they wind up getting set loose. We'll catch them again, right? And then it just keeps going on and on.
So many of the rules that you guys operated under, that we all operated under, were rules based on armies we fought who wore uniforms, who also played by some set of rules. Well, we're almost 2 decades into fighting an enemy that doesn't play by the rules at all. That if any one of you were captured, and you know this more than anyone, it is the price of your life automatically, and as brutally as possible. Are we at a moment where we should start revisiting whether the catch and release program, based on how, the values that we have, is the type of thing we can do if we actually want to win these wars? I mean, if we're in it to win, or does the way we handcuff ourselves mean they drag out for decades because we don't fight it fully?
This war has turned into what Vietnam did. Everybody, after the towers came down, President standing on the rubble pile with a flag flying, and everybody, New Yorkers to Californians to everybody, was like, yes, let's go. America never has had the will to stick with what needs to be done. And look, fighting a war, there's nothing pretty about it. If anybody comes up and tells you that they enjoy going to war, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Your heart and your warrior spirit's what takes you over there to do the job that has to be done. It's not because you like it.
This is going to be a generational fight. This is going to last all our generation, and it's not just a military response. It's also the 7- and 8-year-olds in refugee camps right now in that part of the area having hope. If they have hope, they'll never join Al-Qaeda or ISIS. If they don't have hope, that's the fertile breeding ground for that recruitment. And so figuring out, yes, there's a military component at the moment, but there's going to have to be a long-term component. It comes from within Islam, rejecting this within Islam.
Yeah, no,
I'm
that's
about to say, you got to identify what this is. First of all, it's a holy war. I mean, plain and simple.
Call it what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. And when you know that, that's the rules you need to follow by. But we don't.
That's a great way to leave it, because on the other side of the break, we're gonna ask those questions. Are these endless wars? Is ISIS ultimately defeated? And how long is this long war? Is it a generational war? We'll talk about that next. And remember, you can check out the extended version of this conversation over at Fox Nation. I can tell you it got a bit more candid even than we are here. And if you're not signed up yet, do it now, because Fox Nation is donating $5 to Folds of Honor for every new subscription this Memorial Day weekend. Folds of Honor, an incredible group that provides scholarships to the children and families of the fallen and disabled troops. Stay with us.